Is a new Cold War on tap? The president sends 2 submarines to, quote, appropriate regions in response to Russian leadership. Plus, the Navy loses a 5th-gen fighter. The Air Force narrowly avoids a mid-air disaster. Is this a trend or just a coincidence? And the Air Force wants to blow up some Cybertrucks, why Elon Musk's most revolutionary product is headed for the bombing range. Hello and welcome to Weapons and Warfare, a show made for folks who just want to know more about our national defense. Our goal here is to help you have an informed conversation about what's happening with America's military. For Straight Arrow News, I'm your host, Ryan Robertson, and we start this week with our southern border, where we're getting an up-close look at a small portion of what the mission looks like for American troops. In the abstract, soldiers working the US-Mexico border don't look much different from soldiers on patrol in parts of the Middle East. Miles and miles of rough, rocky terrain, barren and harsh. It's only when you tighten that focus that a fuller picture starts to reveal itself. You see US troops sharing command stations and vehicles with US Border Patrol agents.
These vehicles here are United States Army Stryker vehicles, and our soldiers are using these vehicles as part of our mission to detect and monitor traffic attempting to cross the border.
Soldiers, like Lieutenant Colonel Kyle Brown, are quick to point out other differences between this mission and ones abroad.
You'll see that there are no machine guns or anti-tank missiles while we're down here supporting Border Patrol. So here in Nogales, we're using these vehicles almost exclusively for their cameras, as well as their ability, you can see they look fairly rugged and high off the ground, to traverse some rugged terrain that sometimes Border Patrol's pickup trucks aren't able to.
1,954. That's how many miles of border the United States and Mexico officially share, running from about 18 miles out into the Pacific all the way to about 12 miles off the shore of South Padre Island, Texas. To give you some added perspective, that's a little longer than the distance from Santa Fe, New Mexico, all the way to Boston, Mass. According to the Department of Defense, around 8,500 personnel from every branch of the military are attached to Joint Task Force Southern Border under an emergency declaration from President Donald Trump.
For us, at least, we're just watching, so we're not affecting anyone in any way. But if things get to be different, where there's a crime or something that's happening, we also have eyes on us where we can also say stop, and we can get BP to get there and stop that crime.
For Army Sergeant Anna Harker, it's an assignment with unique significance.
I'm from Panama City, Panama, and I came to the United States around 12 when I was 12 years old. So obviously with me also being an immigrant doing this mission, I feel like I'm doing a difference and a change in helping this country.
Traditionally, border enforcement was handled by civilian agencies, with the military only stepping in occasionally. However, in April, many areas along the border were designated as militarized zones. These zones allow the DoD to sidestep the Posse Comitatus Act, an 1878 law that prohibits the military from conducting civilian law enforcement on U.S. soil. This change allows U.S. troops to apprehend people trespassing in these areas. There are other deterrents as well. The Army is turning to technology that could make a difference for someone considering an illegal crossing.
So this is the LRAD, stands for the Long Range Acoustic Device. It basically broadcasts any tone or any voice at a longer distance. Then we can inform them with this, and we can inform them that if they cross over the barrier, they will be in our national defense area. That is their early warning. If they cross into our national defense area, then they will be detained.
They're also using anti-drone technology to counter smugglers and human traffickers in places where there are gaps in enforcement.
The extra layer of security that they bring, pretty much deploying their soldiers to these different positions, locations in between the ports of entry, it is crucial and has been significant for us because of the fact that we have seen the numbers suddenly decrease.
If you're wondering how much of a difference all of this is making, July was another month of record low illegal crossings at the southern border, with Border Patrol arresting only 4,598 people trying to cross illegally, according to the White House. That's a 24% drop from the previous record low in June, averaging just 148 illegal crossings a day. Despite those stats, there's no timetable for when American troops might leave the border, but President Trump has authorized funding for an additional 3,000 Border Patrol agents, offering $10,000 signing and retention bonuses. All right, folks, we are joined now by super producer Brett Baker. Just hit my microphone. Sorry for the noise. He is also an Air Force veteran. Brett, by the looks of your background, obviously you are a football fan. Summer is winding down. So, spoiler alert, Brett's a Husker fan. For those of you who didn't know, although you don't have any Husker memorabilia behind you, what gives? Your thoughts on the upcoming season? You're closer to Lincoln than I am, obviously, so you get more inside news than I do. Oh, man, look at that.
All right. Well,
all right. It's serious.
Let's tackle this first. My answer as a 55-year-old would be a lot different than it was as a 25-year-old, unfortunately. But year 3 is the year that Matt Rule is supposed to make big leaps. I don't know if we'll get to double digits. I'm hoping for 8 wins. I think 8 wins would be an improvement on last year's record. Maybe go to a little bit better caliber bowl than the Pinstripe Bowl.
You bet.
And knock off a ranked team. That would be nice.
You bet.
But
I haven't done that in a while.
Yeah. No. So there we go. I've been properly. You like that, though?
I love that, Brett. All right, let's get to the headlines. In early August, President Trump said he ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in, quote, the appropriate regions in response to remarks from former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev about the risk of war between Russia and the U.S. Medvedev apparently set the president off when he said the president should remember that Moscow possessed Soviet-era nuclear strike capabilities of last resort. Trump did not specify what he meant by nuclear submarines, nor which specific vessels he was referring to. But, Brett, that ambiguity there means that we could just be talking about nuclear-powered submarines, which all U.S. subs are, or nuclear-armed submarines.
Right. It is difficult to know which one it would be, obviously, under any circumstance anyway. However, mixed messaging is kind of a hallmark of this administration. So it's really hard to know what's really, they could be out there in those places already anyway.
Right.
And we haven't heard much about it since. So at least to this point as we're recording this. So, saber rattling happens on both sides.
True.
And I think this may just be a case of saber rattling for the sake of saber rattling. But we don't know for sure. But yeah, it's an interesting. The rhetoric at least is new in this regard. We haven't heard this kind of talk before, so that is a new element.
Right. In Medvedev, he's Putin's little mouthpiece. That hey, go say some stuff and see what lands, and that's kind of his role there as well. So you're probably right. A little bit of saber rattling on both sides, but just that ambiguity there is kind of just a nice reminder. Hey, Vlad, we got these things. We still keep up with ours. Don't try us, right? Next up, some classic bad news, good news. First up, bad news. A Navy F-35 crashed in a Central California field. Good news. The pilot safely ejected before impact. Authorities confirmed the plane crashed near the Naval Air Station Lemoore in late July. Next, bad news. A near collision between a Delta-operated jet and a B-52 in North Dakota triggered an FAA investigation. Good news. Thanks to an alert pilot, the commercial jet saw the B-52 and executed a go-around, and everyone was able to land safe and sound. Brett, what's the deal with planes crashing?
Yeah. So the interesting question is, is it coincidence, or is this a part of a broader trend and whatnot? So there's 3 different kinds of mishaps generally that the military or in aviation have. There's the Class A, Class B, Class C. Class A being the most severe, $2.5 million in excess of damage, and fatalities and injuries and damaged property, that kind of thing. Class B, injuries, and it starts at 600,000 up to 2.5. And then Class C is lower, something that doesn't really cause any damage, but action had to be taken at some point. So looking back at like the last 5 years, because I feel the way everything moves along and troop sizes, squadron sizes go up and down. You get more F-35s into the mix. So taking the smaller scope as opposed to like a 10-year grab, it's pretty much within the standard means. In 2014, the Navy had 17 Class A's, and in 2024 they had 11. So, and I don't know where they're at this point in this year, but I don't think it's above 11. And yeah, the same thing. Like the Air Force, and the Air Force, of course, being the largest Air Force in the world, had 27 Class A, kind of averaged about 27 Class A incidents annually, which does seem like a lot, but then you have to also factor in how much aircraft they actually possess.
Right.
So, no, I just think, I don't think it's a trend. I think it's probably within the means of the average of how this kind of goes. I just think there's probably more eyeballs on it right now. We're super hyper-focused.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Just there's more awareness about it, more cell phones, more, internet guys talking about it, right? So probably just, more eyeballs, more focus, more awareness doesn't necessarily mean that there's more of it. So. Brett, you will, of course, appreciate this as an Air Force veteran because this might be the Air Force's best recruiting pitch ever. Do you want to blow up a Cybertruck? Recently, the folks over at the War Zone detailed a particular finding in a contracts document from the Air Force Test Center. It seems the Air Force is looking for 33 vehicles for target practice for the U.S. Special Operations Command Standoff Precision Guided Munitions Program. Brett, does the USAF just want to see how a big electric vehicle blows up, or is there something, particular about a Cybertruck? I just think they look ridiculous. It's probably a fine vehicle, but they look like, old school trash bin. Anyway, why does the Air Force want to blow these things up?
Well, other than personal kicks, I'm sure. Doing a little light reading. It's funny. So they requisitioned 33 vehicles for this type of thing. The only one that was a name brand that was requested, there were like trucks and cars and whatnot. But the Tesla Cybertruck was the only one specifically mentioned. One keynote, they didn't have to be running. They just had to be towable, which is pretty hilarious. But I think, the construction of those is interesting. They probably want to see what happens when we do drop, munitions on it. And then, of course, you have that gigantic battery in there that you want to see like what happens, because I think if suspect A or the person we're looking for is cruising around in a Cybertruck in downtown wherever,
if you hit it with a stinger, that
could be very bad. Like that could have exponential, where you really kind of want to minimize that footprint.
Right.
So. Yeah, I think it's probably just a learning thing, other than also too, like, man, I got to blow up a Cybertruck today.
Well, and there's that Russian, not Russian, but he was like the Chechen rebel leader, Chechen general. I can't remember his name. Yeah. But he mounted guns to his Cybertrucks, right? So like we know that there are some warlords out there with Cybertrucks, so maybe kind of a little hey guys, we're figuring out how to kill you efficiently. I don't know, might make me think twice if I was a drug lord in some third world country with a Cybertruck. Right,
be a little more nondescript.
Exactly, like fly under the radar, guys, under the radar. But, all right, Brett, really appreciate your time. Thanks again. Cybertrucks, like I said, it's got to be the Air Force. Like if I was a 17-year-old kid and Air Force recruiters like, hey man, sign up and you can, blow these things up. Be a hard sell for me to pass up. I'll tell you that much.
Absolutely.
So much of modern warfare means having the right tool for the job. And here to talk a little bit more about that is Joe Chan with American Rheinmetall. And Joe, we're talking about airburst munitions today. Talk to me a little bit about this first 40 millimeter airburst that we have.
So what we're doing for the Army is to develop a 40 millimeter airburst round. Previously, the way you're engaging targets is the 40 millimeter round will have to hit the target. So it's a point detonating fuse. It's great for the target sets that it's going after, but it's not so great for target sets where you're trying to engage targets that are behind cover, because you just can't hit them. So what the Army is trying to do is, how do you make this into an airburst round so that you can explode this above a target where they're hiding? So what the technology that we've provided is, we're programming this fuse to explode at a 3D point in space by telling it the range, which it then converts it into a time of flight. And the way that we're doing this is, you'll see these little indentations here around the edge of the fuse that no other of the 40 millimeter rounds have. What those are LEDs. They're receiving signals as it's launching out of the muzzle from an IR programmer on the barrel of the gun, telling this how far to go. And then when it reaches the predetermined time of flight, it goes off. Very highly effective.
You bet. So that's what the Army is working on. And like you said, it's for people who are undercover. If you're behind a sand berm or behind a wall or something, your 40 millimeter round, standard detonation, wouldn't be able to necessarily punch through that. This can kind of take care of the target on the other side of the wall without going through the wall. The Navy has something different that you're working on. So this is a 30 millimeter round, correct?
Yes, this is a 30 by 173 millimeter round that the Navy is putting on some of their ships. It's still in the developmental phase, and it is also an airburst round. It's a little different than what the Army is doing. Obviously, the form factor is different,
sure, but
it's being fired out of a big cannon. And while the Army's round is more of an HE round, and not necessarily optimized for counter-air, this round that we're doing for the Navy is optimized for counter-air. What you see here is a couple of rows of tungsten sub-projectiles. There's 168 of them. And the way this airburst is, upon reaching the time of flight, these tungsten projectiles are ejected in a forward cone of fragments that are because the round is spiraling, this is the resulting frag pattern. Now this is just a 1/4 scale 3D printed target array. The actual target that we scanned this from is about 4 times the size of it, and this is the pattern. Obviously you can see that all these tungsten small fragments will result in a bunch of little holes about 4 times the size of this. Very effective against counter-UAS targets.
You bet, you bet. And like you said, the spoke pattern, the cyclical pattern is because the round is spinning, and as it explodes, that cone of destruction is spinning in air as well, and that's what makes that impact pattern.
Correct.
All right. Joe, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for joining us today on our Weapons and Warfare segment. Appreciate it. That's all the time we have for this week's this week's segment of our Weapon of the Week. Time for Comms Check, and this week we're dipping into the email bag to tackle a viewer's observation about a recent episode. After watching our July 30th installment that focused on the Marine Corps' effort to modernize, which is called the Force Design Initiative, Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Benson wrote, "This recent article, Marine Corps Marks 5 Years of Force Design Modernization, by Ryan Robertson and Brett Baker, does not accurately reflect the historic retention success the Marine Corps has experienced, which has positively influenced the health of our recruitment program, as well as provided stability to our training pipeline." First, Colonel Benson, thank you for watching and taking the time to reach out to us. We sincerely appreciate it. Second, you're right. On rewatch, we probably didn't spend as much time or take a deep enough dive on the Corps' retention success. So let's go ahead and address it now. In 2021, the Corps launched an initiative called Talent Management 2030. The goal was to transform recruitment, development, and retention to meet future operational demands. So far, The results have been very positive for the Corps. In fiscal year 2022, the Marines met their retention goal early, marking the first time that happened in a decade. Going back to fiscal year 2023, it's more of the same, with a goal of retaining 6,225 first-term Marines. The Corps exceeded that by nearly 14%, keeping 7,079 Marines in uniform. They also retained 64% of eligible subsequent term Marines. And according to a September 2024 press release, the Marines exceeded their retention goals for fiscal year 2024, successfully retaining 114% of their first-term reenlistment candidates and reenlisting more than 5,700 subsequent term Marines. The bottom line is this: since launching what is now known as Force Design and Talent Management 2030, the Marine Corps has consistently met or exceeded its recruitment and retention goals, something that definitely bodes well for the service as it continues to build a force capable of excelling when America faces its next conflict.
All opinions expressed in this segment are solely the opinions of the contributors.
All right, folks, we are in the final straightaway of the show. If you like what you saw and or heard and want to help us in our mission to help others have a more informed conversation about national defense activities, you can just like and subscribe to our social media feeds and share these stories with your friends. For my wrap this week, I thought about doing something on President Donald Trump's deployment of National Guard soldiers to the nation's capital. While the city is the safest it's been in about 30 years, but there are plenty of others chiming in about that, and I don't really have anything to add other than saying it's a bad idea. So today, I want to talk about another bad idea: crashing a fully functioning NASA satellite on purpose. So apparently the Trump administration asked NASA to come up with plans to end the mission of two orbiting carbon observatory instruments, OCOs. It's not really clear why the White House wants to end the missions. We know the administration questions the impacts of climate change and says it's on a mission to save taxpayer money, but again, the intentions are not clear. One of the OCO devices is on the International Space Station. The other is on a freestanding satellite. If NASA carries out the plan to permanently end the mission of the OCOs, then the satellite will be abandoned and left to burn up in the atmosphere. It cost around $750 million to build and launch the things, but only about $15 million annually to keep them running. And the data gathered by the carbon observing units are some of the best the world has ever seen. It's used by scientists, farmers, and governments alike. In addition to gathering carbon data, scientists also discovered soon after launching the OCOs that they could also monitor crop growth around the world, which has national security implications because crop collapse and famine are primary indicators of regional instability. The point is, we should not be trying to crash the things. It makes absolutely zero sense, unless the White House thinks that by taking the satellites down, suddenly carbon will stop entering the atmosphere. Killing the canaries in the coal mine doesn't nullify the dangers in the coal mine. It's just a bad idea. For senior producer Brett Baker, video editor Brian Spencer, and motion artist Dakota Patillo, I'm Ryan Robertson with Straight Arrow News, signing off.